Hey guys, this is Zlewikk and welcome back to our series of videos about dev diaries about Team Talks. So as you all know by now, EU5. Sorry for no video last week, which would be about great powers and hegemons, but I was simply on the grandest land. And about that, I just launched my VOD channel when I'll be putting all of the full videos from my Twitch live streams. You see already my Mewar campaign is fully there, all 7 streams of it, and I just placed a day 1 VOD from our Grandest Land campaign as Nitra. There'll be more coming in the next days, same as a fully edited videos, but they will be simply slower. So if you want to get notified about these VODs, make sure to subscribe the new channel. So today we're gonna talk about cultures. Pretty important roleplay, but also gameplay mechanic of every EU game. As they are saying here, a culture is a combination of the vernacular, music, food, identity, ethnicity, art, and various other hard to define ideas. This is something possessed by countries, pops, or characters. It contains 2 dimensions, a culture group and a language. And language is a pretty big thing that wasn't really in EU4. So as an example, we've got a Maratha culture in India that is using a Marathi language, and it is in Indian culture group. Very importantly, all of the cultures will be having some kind of opinion of each other, and it will be going from enemy through negative, neutral, positive, and kindred. Most of the cultures will be just neutral towards each other. Some historical cultures will be kindred, positive or negative towards each other, but you'll be also having diplomatic options, diplomatic actions, which will be helping you changing the opinion of your culture and the other countries towards each other over time. Obviously, it's also two-way opinion, so I might look at this culture as kindred, but they are looking at me as negative. What now? As you also see here, the cultures will be having 4 different types within your country, starting with a non-accepted culture, through tolerated culture, accepted culture, and a primary culture. And each of these types of the cultures will be taking some of your culture capacity. So same as we had diplomatic capacity to deal with your diplomat stuff, there will be culture capacity in your country, which is, I think, a big improvement compared to EU4 and just a flat limit of accepted cultures you can make. So you see, for example, Aragonese is taking 0.24 of cultural capacity, Andalusia is taking 0.88, Sephardi is taking 0.14. Since this Aragon is above the cultural capacity, so you can go above, not like in EU4, you'll be just simply paying some negative effects. There will be obviously advances in every age to increase maximum capacity, and each culture cost will be depending on the size of that culture, the opinions of each other, if they are in the same culture group, and also if they're using the same language. So why Andalusia costs a lot, it is mostly because amount of the pops, and not many other modifiers. It's getting +1 flat for being a tolerated culture. In case of Aragonese, it's getting +3 by default because it's an accepted culture, so 1 level higher than tolerated. But since there's a positive cultural opinion, it gets -25%. It's the same language family, so that's -10%. And also a 1 shared culture group, so that's -15%. And then the population is also small, so that's another -51%. So in total, it does not cost that much. You see, it's just 0.24 versus 0.88 from Andalusia. So what's the difference between each of these types of the cultures in the country? Well, the non-accepted culture is not gonna give you much. At this stage, you're pretty much just ignoring them. That's the default status. They're very miserable and the population does not increase much. Well, for a tolerated culture, the pops will be a bit more content. They'll grow as normal, and they will be simply happier. The fun starts with accepted cultures, because even though it costs 3 times more than a tolerated culture, it is much more desirable because it's gonna impact your levies and sailors. It will also help you coring the provinces, help you flip colonial charter to your ownership, and also improve relations with other nations that have this culture as the primary one. What's important, that might be a downgrade, this pops from this culture cannot become slaves, and you cannot accept a culture that is an enemy culture opinion. What about primary culture? Obviously, this is one culture that will be on top of your pyramid of the cultures. It will be favored in the calculations, and usually it's just the culture with the most of the pops in the country, but there'll be a lot of situations where only an elite group of people, group of pops are ruling the country. Primary culture will be mainly unlocking you features, specific advances for this culture, unit types, guarantee forms, etc. How can you swap your primary culture? You know, from EU4 enjoyers who love to change their primary culture to farm something else. You'll be able to do that within a few requirements, like for example that culture is becoming your dominant culture in the country, just like in EU4, or, which is something new, the culture of your ruler, which might be different to your primary culture. And that's something seems disappointing, because there's also a game rule for it to be of the same culture group, so I cannot change to different culture groups, which hurts. But there are some cultures that are in multiple culture groups, which you'll see later, so that's a potential gamey mechanic to go and jump between different culture groups by using the specific cultures. How about the languages? It is also mainly content feature, but it will be having some mechanics. Most importantly, languages will be split on 3 tiers: language family, language itself, the most important one, and dialects. Language families, for example, Zlewikk or Germanic or Romanic languages. And this will mostly offer a small opinion bonus and also slightly minimizes the cost of things like culture acceptance or market attraction when you are within the same language family with the other nation. Languages have language power, which is impacted by many sources, such as which countries use it as a card language, common language, and liturgical language. It is expressed as a percentage of the most powerful language in the world and impacts the intensity of bonuses to get it from. Like for example, for Spanish, it is within the Romance family and that language power is 30%. It has multiple dialects and it is used by multiple cultures. It is not used as a liturgical language, but is also a card language of Castile and Navarre. At the same time, one market, so Sevilla market, is using it as their market language. Then finally we have dialects, just so like Poles are not, for example, feeling left over because they are just West Slavic. There you go. There'll be also dialects for specific regions, like English will be split with the Scottish, etc. That's an example mapping of the Germanic language family, which has 4 different languages, and each of these languages have multiple dialects, except Frisian is just Frisian. Common language of a country is simply the language that is used by the primary culture. As simple as that. Liturgical language is a bit more deep, and a lot of religions will allow you to freely switch the liturgical language, but some of them will be very blocking any going outside of this main language, which for example for Catholics is gonna be Latin, for Muslims it's gonna be Arabic. Market language is gonna be representing the lingua franca used between the merchant, which is based on the dominant language of the burghers in the market capital. The higher the market power, the higher its contribution to the language power. Court language is much more freely changed, and that's gonna be a primary language used in the formal proceedings of the government. For example, it might be the language spoken in parliament or written legal documents. The possible languages are drawn from your primary and accepted cultures, your ruler, or your overlord country. The exact court language you have affects the satisfaction of the various estates. Nobles want you to have a more powerful language, meanwhile peasants just want it to be the common language. Burghers are happy if used the same as capital's market language, while the clergy of course wants everything to be in the liturgical language. Finally, we have culture groups, so same as in EU4, a group of cultures that are in a very shared identity towards each other. They're usually independent from the language and the diplomacy, but are rather a represent of the geographic and genealogical connection that is difficult to represent without abstraction. An example will be a British culture group, which will be having English, Northumbrian, Scots, Welsh, Cornish, Highland, Norse Gael, and Anglo-Irish. In gameplay terms, culture groups give small opinion bonuses and make culture acceptance a lot cheaper, but also various pieces of content are gated behind the culture group instead of culture. So for example, your primary culture needs to be in the British culture group to form Great Britain. And something new compared to EU4 is that one culture can be part of different culture groups, like for example Norse Gael will be part of the Celtic, Scottish, British and Scandinavian culture groups. So for example, if you want to go out of the British culture group to Scandinavian, you just take Norse Gael as of your primary culture, which allows you to change into other cultures from the other culture groups. But yeah, this is much pretty it for this dev diary. Next week, Johan is gonna tell us a bit more about works of art and culture war, which is also new to EU5 compared to EU4. But before I move there, let's see if there's any interesting feedback in the comment section. Following the example of Norse Gael, is there a way to mix two cultures or create new ones in this game, sort of like in CK3? As it stands, we don't mix and match cultures as in CK3. If you want to go and play with the cultures, go play the Crusader Kings. I would like intercultural opinions to be dynamic. However, I suppose they are to be static and encoded just like religions. They are dynamic, you have a diplomatic action to change them over time. So they are preset, but you can change this if you really want to. Someone is asking, why do we even have dialects at all? It has no significant sense. And Saint Dave, which wrote this, that I saying, because it looks weird if your Danish character's name is getting Swedish spelling variants on and so on. Basically, it's flavor tool for us immersed players. So I did not read it, but it was said in the diary that one of the purposes of the dialects is the province name changes or character names. Because even though you are in a specific language, your dialect might be a bit different, and you want to be included in the gameplay. And I absolutely agree with this point. Will cultures that colonize the new world form new cultures, like Spanish cultures forming Mexican culture when colonizing Central America, the former Aztec Empire? Currently no. Interested to hear opinions of how that could work though. So the guys is saying it's not in game yet, but we might do it in the future. People respectfully disagree. So does it mean that they want it or they don't want this feature? Why isn't the court language of England Norman? It is actually the Norman dialect, which belongs to the French language. Card language map mode shows languages, not dialects. See, they thought about this. Will you guys provide feedback diaries on the constructive criticism from previous diaries? Yeah, the dev diary about great powers and hegemons, I think it received quite a lot of negative feedback, mainly like how you become an empire or kingdom, because it required a lot of the primal culture. And as they said, even this dev diary, there are examples of countries where a very small primal culture ruled over a big enormous country. That would be weird if they couldn't become an empire. And Johan saying, yes, I got 2 half finished on 2 of the 3 semi-negatively received ones. Really nice, I'm looking forward to it, and I'm gonna record videos on this. But for today guys, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this dev diary, I think it's pretty straightforward, keeping more or less the same system as in EU4 with add-ons for improvements. And obviously guys, subscribe to the VODs channel to get notified about Grandest Land videos over there. Bye!